Hello and welcome to the Fuel Run Recover podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, registered dietitian, running coach, marathon runner, and mom. This season, we're breaking down running's biggest trends, hot topics, and myths, and turning them into practical nutrition and training advice you can actually use every day. Let's get into it. Hey runners, before we get into today's episode, I want to ask you a quick question. Have you ever wondered if your nutrition is actually helping your running, or is it actually holding you back? If you want to find out, I've created a brand new free resource just for you. It's called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a super quick checklist that's going to help you spot the signs of underfueling, low energy availability, or where the gaps in your nutrition might be that are impacting your recovery and actually slowing you down. It only takes a few minutes to go through, and by the end, you're going to know whether or not your fueling is on the right track, or if you really need to start making some changes to the way you approach your eating so you can start to feel stronger on every run, reduce your injury risk, and actually get the results that you're training so hard for. You can grab your free copy right now by clicking on the link in the show notes. Again, this is called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a free downloadable resource, and it's going to give you so much clarity on how you can start feeling smarter and running stronger. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel Run Recover podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Natchuk, sport dietitian and running coach. And today we are here to answer a very important question that I have not directly addressed before in this way, which is how often should you actually be weighing yourself? And I wanted to talk about this because it's something, weight and body composition and how to optimize those and modify those and all of that kind of stuff, comes up a tremendous amount in the conversations that we have here on the Fuel Run Recover podcast. But it kind of came to me recently that I've never directly addressed the question and kind of my thoughts around how often should we actually be getting on the scale. So that's what we're going to dive into today. And I'm really excited to talk to you about this and to share my thoughts on the subject. And part of the reason for that is because there are a lot of people still out there, I want to say, and it's because to me, like this just seems sort of so passé, to be using weight as an indicator of like anything relevant, aside from hydration, which we are going to talk about today, I promise you. But to be using weight as an indicator, of results, of changes in body composition, of health, of so many things, like to be using just simply the number on the scale in that way is just so out of date and so out of touch with reality and the better body composition measuring methods that we have and what we now know and understand about how uninterrelated, I'm not saying that very well, how disconnected weight alone is from health status, right? And so when we look at things like the body mass index, right, the BMI, which you probably have heard of, we look at something like BMI or body mass index, and we see at this grand, large population scale, in general, there can be correlations made between different BMI levels, different categories of body mass index and health risk. So on that like large population scale, that data can be useful for looking at big picture stuff. But once we like start to narrow down to the individual level, person to person, there are far more validated and far more useful tools and methods of assessing someone's individual health status, and even more important for you, the runner who's listening to this, results and progress and changes in terms of body composition. So if there's, when I see people who are still promoting, daily weigh-ins, or people who are still trying to use daily weigh-ins as a way of seeing how they're doing with reaching their goals, with reaching weight or body composition goals, I just really want to start by saying, like, we need to stop doing this. We need to stop getting on the scale every day, or twice a day, like, my goodness, and using that as a way to make decisions or think that this is a useful tool for decision making around eating habits or training habits. So let's kind of get into it. So I want you to imagine, and maybe this is you, but imagine a scenario where you are actively trying to lose weight, or maybe you are actively trying to avoid weight gain. So maybe you have previously lost weight and you want to maintain the weight you're at, you're actively trying to lose weight, or perhaps you're in a scenario where you have been at a stable weight for a long time, but you just want to avoid weight gain. And so one of the methods that you've incorporated into your day in order to do that and assess that on an ongoing basis is to get on the scale every single morning, right? And at surface level, like this can seem like a relatively harmless practice because it's like, oh, I'm just getting on the scale every morning. I just want to like check in. I just want to like see how I'm doing. I just want to like follow up on, kind of the eating or exercise decisions and things like that I made yesterday. And that's fair. Again, at a surface level, that's fair, except that what you've been told the scale is telling you is not actually what the scale is telling you, right? When you say, had a weekend of being out with friends and socializing and eating more than usual, maybe drinking more than usual, or maybe you just got back from a week or 10-day vacation, you were at an all-inclusive resort, and of course you were kind of eating and drinking with abandon and enjoying yourself, whatever the scenario might be. When you get on the scale after something like that to kind of check in and assess, what you're really being shown are, if we're talking short term, right? Like something that happened over the course of like a 2-week span or less. What you're being shown here is changes in hydration status, changes in the muscle glycogen content of your body, and changes to fluid levels or fluid retention as a result of inflammation, say from like alcohol consumption or something like that. So in the short term like that, this is not assessing actual weight change, which, I mean, the way most of us are thinking about this is fat loss, of course, right? Like when we're trying to lose weight, we're not just trying to, lose some water or drop some muscle glycogen or something like that, right? No, we actually want to reduce our body fat mass, reduce our body fat percentage. And so these short-term changes, even if it is, 7-10 days, that kind of thing, is not going to reflect true weight changes at that like micro level. Instead, right, actual fat loss is very slow and it gets slower as you progressively lose weight and lose body fat. So this is really challenging for people and really frustrating for a lot of people who maybe started out at a much heavier weight, had some initial success with seeing some rapid changes to weight and body composition, some rapid improvements right off the bat when you first started running, first started exercising, first started eating better. And then as you progress, as you start to see those results, the results start to get slower, which is the opposite of kind of like what we want or what we think should happen. It's kind of like we want these things to compound and snowball and to gain momentum and to get faster and better and all of that. And unfortunately, there's usually a lot of initial success because now all of a sudden we're like doing this new thing and we're seeing changes or getting results because of that. And then as it goes on, as we have less weight or less body fat to lose, those gains become more marginal. And it goes the same, like if we're talking about building fitness as a runner, like people who are already at that like elite level of running, trying to shave, a couple of seconds off of their best performance, right? Like those little marginal gains are so much harder to come by than the person who is new to running and how much potential they have to make improvements as a new runner. And so when we are getting on the scale often and, weighing ourselves every single day, it can sometimes feel really defeating or really frustrating when we're doing all the, quote unquote, right things, but we aren't just seeing that like steady, progressive, linear drop in the scale, right? Because even with like the best possible consistency, which of course is not going to be 100% because that cannot be the expectation. But even with like some decent consistency and doing all of the things, you're still not going to see the scale go down every single day. There are going to be days where the scale goes up. And this, of course, can be related to fluctuations in water and muscle glycogen, right? So our hydration and how much carbohydrate we have stored in our muscles, which is also stored with additional water. So that contributes to some of those weight changes we see. Inflammation, so transient levels of inflammation that come from, after a hard workout. We can have a little bit more fluid retention as a result of that too. And again, these are things that like can make the scale go up or down by like a few pounds, but it's enough that people can get really frustrated by it. You've been working really hard and the scale's all of a sudden up 2 pounds. It's like, wow, what happened? Well, nothing, right? Nothing bad, nothing wrong. It's just that the scale is not the best way to be assessing progress and changes, and especially not something that we're going to get valuable information from on a day-to-day basis. I find that most people who are doing these daily weigh-ins end up more frustrated and defeated than anything else. Like I rarely meet somebody who weighs themselves every single day and has a very healthy and positive relationship with food and exercise and their bodies. Now, if you are the exception to that rule, I'm sure there are people out there, right? Because obviously I have not worked with every single person on this planet. I do not know every single person on this planet. And typically people that I work with come to work with me because they have a problem that they want to solve, right? So they recognize that there's an issue with their nutrition or an issue with their training, or they want to lose weight or whatever it might be. So there are probably people out there who this works well for. But what I'm saying is that if you're feeling stuck and if you are struggling, reevaluating your relationship with your frequency of weighing yourself, I think is a really good thing to consider. The other thing is that, like I mentioned, we've got muscle glycogen stores. We have body water and fluctuations in hydration. We have transient levels of inflammation that come and go depending on our workout recovery. We have hormone fluctuations, especially for female athletes who have a menstrual cycle. We see fluctuations in hormones throughout the month that are going to dramatically change things like water retention, things like muscle glycogen stores, things like inflammation, right? So we can see a lot of shifts in weight just based on where we're at in our cycle. And again, it's not that we're not doing the right things with our training habits or with our eating habits or any of that. It's more so about the fact that there's just so many things beyond our control that our weight does not really reflect on that accurately. So rather than it being something that gives us data and insight and a tool to make decisions, it ends up just being this like extra piece of confusion and frustration. So, instead, I do think that there are a lot more effective ways we can be monitoring changes in weight and changes in body composition. The first and kind of most important thing is we just need to be getting on the scale less often. Like just getting on the scale every single day is not helping anybody. It's not giving us anyone good information, again, aside from hydration, which I do want to touch on here. But instead, we should be looking at getting a legitimate body composition analysis done. And even then, it should not be more than about once a quarter. So just a couple times throughout the year, are we actually going and getting that body composition tested? Because again, like body composition changes are slow. So we're not going to be going for like a BIA or a DEXA scan or something like that every week or even every month, right? It's too much. And we can start to spin our wheels a little bit and second guess our training, second guess our eating, second guess everything if we are not always seeing this linear, progressive, like perfect march towards the result that we're trying to achieve, right? There's going to be ups and downs. That's completely normal and expected and okay. And to put that pressure on ourselves of always needing that number to be going down consistently I think it's a distraction, and it can really cause us to feel a lot of frustration and a lot of negative emotions about everything. And it's not getting us where we want to go. I've worked with clients who have been very, very weight focused, and it's hard because, I'm getting a lot of feedback from those clients that like, oh, it's not working. Oh, it's not working. The plan isn't working. I'm not seeing my weight change. It's like, okay, it's been a couple days or it's been a week. And instead, what I can always guarantee to people is that working together on your nutrition, on your training, we will improve your body composition, right? You will build muscle mass and you will maybe lose body fat if you have body fat to lose and if that's a goal of yours. But those things sometimes can, mask one another, right? So even if we're looking a little bit more longer term. So, just to make my position on this super clear, I do not think that there's any value in daily weigh-ins as a weight loss tool or as a reflection of weight loss efforts. I think daily weigh-ins, that's way, way too often. Once a week at the most, if you do feel like getting on the scale and checking your weight is a supportive, positive, helpful habit for you, then once a week at most, no more often than once a week. And again, you may not see linear progress every single week, the scale dropping. There's going to be some ups and downs. But like if we zoom out over the course of, 3, 6, 12 months, yeah, generally you're going to see that, of course, trending down. If it isn't, then we want to circle back and look at, okay, what are we doing? Like what's the plan that we're following? Is it working? Are we following the plan? Are we having trouble with consistency? Are we doing a couple days on and then falling off track on the weekends? Got some things to dig into here, right? If we're looking at body composition shifts, again, these are very slow. And depending on your genetics, you could be someone who gains muscle mass at a similar rate that you lose body fat. And I've had clients like this too, where they have changed their body composition quite dramatically. But what's even more surprising is that the scale has barely changed at all. So you can see the differences in body composition, the measurements, the size of their clothing. Like there's really big changes to how much muscle versus how much body fat they have. But when they actually look at the number on the scale, it is reflecting very little, if any, change. And that, again, if we were just focusing on the scale and not looking at anything else, that's a really tough place to be in because you're putting your trust in this coach, you're putting your trust in this dietitian you're working with to help you see changes, and you think there are none. But instead, most people don't really care about the number on the scale at the end of the day. At the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to, have clothes that fit us better. We want to fit into clothes that have not been fitting us recently. We want to, feel stronger. Maybe we want to, have a change in how we look, that sort of thing. And none of those are wrong or bad goals to have. I just don't want people to get stuck in that, thinking that the scale is the be all end all and the thing that they should be focusing their efforts on. So I think body composition measurements are much more insightful. And again, we don't want to be doing them too frequently. We can even do measurements at home, checking things like waist circumference, checking circumference of like our legs, our arms, our chest, our hips, etc., looking for shifts there. Because generally, as we see improvements in body composition, right, as we gain muscle and lose body fat, we are going to see a shift in where our weight is on our body, right? So waist measurement can get smaller, maybe hip measurement gets smaller, but other places are going to get bigger as we build muscle and lose body fat, right? There's a shift in like where that weight is on our body. But again, this is like a thing. I would not recommend doing this every single week because like those gains are so marginal, right? Like a little centimeter by centimeter, half a centimeter, like enough that just, whether or not you've eaten in the couple of hours prior will make a big difference in the centimeters around your waist, right? The stomach expands a little bit after we eat. So even something like measurements, I would say like once a month, no more than once a month. And if you're coming into this, right, if you're starting this process with a waist measurement that is already in a healthy range for you, then you might not expect, like you might not see a lot of changes, right? You might build muscle in other places, but not necessarily see your waist measurement come down by a lot. So it's a little bit, kind of person to person basis too. Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit, and I do want to talk about when is weight useful, right? When can we use weight? As I alluded to earlier in the episode, I was talking about hydration. And, one of the things that the scale is better at assessing on a day-to-day basis is fluctuations in our body water, fluctuations in our fluid levels. And this can be helpful for a lot of people to understand, because while those daily weight checks, those frequent weight checks, do not tell us anything about body composition, they do not tell us anything about muscle mass versus body fat, or anything that is like actually important when it comes to like overall results or progress towards those types of goals. What it can reflect, what it does reflect a little bit better, is sweat losses from exercise. So large fluctuations in hydration status or total body water, right, can be dependent on the sweat loss rates that we experience during a workout or during exercise. So the one way that we can assess this and kind of see how we're doing when it comes to our hydration and how we're doing with our hydration during our workouts is to actually check our weight before and after we train. Now, this typically is going to be most effective for like long workouts. So like things that are at the very least an hour, but probably like your long runs, like 90 minutes plus. Basically though, what you'll do is you would get on the scale, you would check your weight before you start your workout. Then you would get back from your workout, you would check your weight after your workout. We are going to factor in how much you drank in terms of fluids during that workout. And then from there, you're going to have your sweat loss rate. You can divide that by how many hours you were exercising, and then you would have your hourly sweat loss rate. So this, on that like microscopic scale, is actually helpful for determining, okay, in this environment, right, how hot it is outside, it's a humid day or not, that kind of thing, actually helps us to determine what your fluid replacement needs are to maintain your hydration during exercise. This can be really, it's not a perfect system, obviously. Like this is not, even we have technology now, we have other methods of kind of telling us more about hydration and sweat loss. This is a little bit of getting to be a more outdated method as newer stuff has come out that I think is really handy and can be, really valuable for other things too. But I do still think this method has some value. And so I do recommend, trying it out if it's something that interests you. So it's not a perfect system, but it can be revealing, especially if you're a runner who struggles a lot with GI issues or bonking later in your long runs or races. So if it's like, okay, I get to mile 16, 18, 20 of my marathon and my stomach just turns on me, or my long runs, I just like, as that run progresses, my gut gets worse and worse. And I have a very hard time taking in the food and fuel or fluids that I need to, because my stomach starts to progressively get worse, that sort of thing. Or if you're just fading, like if maybe your gut is fine, but you just find as you get towards the end of those long runs or those races, like you're just bonking and you're just absolutely fading, all of those are definitely indications that hydration can be an issue. So seeing like, okay, how much fluid did I actually lose during this workout? Can really be revealing and very interesting for a lot of people. So at the end of the day, when it comes to weight, the thing I want you to always be asking yourself, right? And not just with getting on the scale and the frequency of getting on the scale, but any measurement for body composition, any measurement, whether we're doing a waist measurement or we're doing a DEXA scan or a BIA analysis or whatever it might be, anything that we're using, I want you to ask yourself, what am I doing with this information, right? What is this information telling me? What value is it providing to me? How am I using this information to make decisions? And if the answer is, I don't know, I have no idea what I'm doing with this information, I don't know how to use this information to make decisions, or if I'm even going to use it to make decisions, then maybe we don't need to be using it, right? Like maybe it isn't helpful. And it's okay to not include that as part of your routine. Because like checking our weight obsessively does not necessarily lead us to change our habits in the way that you would think it would, right? You might think, and it seems kind of like common sense, that weighing yourself is motivating to make changes. But the problem is you're weighing yourself like after you've done whatever it is that you've done in order to gain weight, right? So like that ship has sailed. And okay, maybe now you're coming back and you're getting on the scale to like assess the damage, right? See how bad it is or whatever. But like imagine, okay, let's say you had a weekend with lots of eating and drinking, that sort of thing. Come back, get on the scale on Monday morning, and the scale is up, but it's not up as much as you thought it was going to be, right? Like you're like, oh, wow, I didn't gain as much over the weekend as I thought I would, right? Now, of course, this is not actual fat gain, right? We've established that. This is going to be inflammation, hydration, muscle glycogen, et cetera, all the other things, but not a significant change in body fat. Okay, cool. Like, does that mean that we just like keep eating and drinking with abandon because like it didn't cause that much of a difference? Well, no, of course not, right? But then on the other hand, let's say that you gained more than you expected, right? It scales up way more than you thought it was going to be. Oh no, right? Does that mean that you should double down on your diet, restrict twice as many calories this week, add in extra workouts and all that kind of stuff? Well, also big no, right? And that might be the kind of overarching thought of like, oh yeah, well, of course, like if I need to make up that difference, I need to like get the scale back down quicker. So I'm going to like double down on my efforts. But like, that's not great either, right? Because that's a really fast track to a binge restrict cycle with eating, unsustainable volumes of training that lead to getting injured, getting burnt out, right? All the things that we really want to avoid, all of the things that pull us away from long-term sustainability and consistency, right? We start to spiral on this like really microscopic level of like this day I'm doing this, and then this day I'm doing this, and then this day I'm doing this, right? The scale's down, so I do this, the scale's up, so I do that, or whatever it might be. Like that's not helping anybody. Instead, we have to reevaluate our relationship with the scale, understand what it is and what it isn't telling us, have other ways that we can monitor and measure progress and results that are more tied into the daily action steps that we can take to get us closer to those goals, right? Because for most people, it is not about the number on the scale at the end of the day, right? It's about fitting clothes that you want to fit, or it's about achieving health markers, right? Improving health outcomes, being stronger, being able to do certain things with our bodies, right? Like there's so much more to it than just that number. But when we're stuck on that number and we're tracking that number and we're like really obsessing over that number, that's just a distraction from everything else that we could be doing that actually will move the needle and get us closer to our goal. All right. So that's everything I want to share with you today. I hope that you found this episode helpful. I hope that it gave you a little bit more insight into understanding weight, understanding what the number on the scale is telling you versus not telling you. And of course, my thoughts on how often you should really be checking your weight and what you might want to do instead. All right, so that's it for today. And I want to thank you for tuning in. And of course, if you need some help with this, if you are maybe stuck in a weight tracking cycle that you want to break free from, but you don't know what else to do, right? Like, and I understand the scale is convenient, right? Most people have one in their bathroom and it's easier than other methods. You don't even know what other methods to use to track results or track progress. This is absolutely something that I would love to help you with. I have lots of options of how we can work together in a nutrition capacity, in a training, coaching capacity for you as a runner. You can find out more about all of that, my different one-on-one services. I take a small number of one-on-one clients each season, my online program, the Fuel Train Recover Club, and of course, my new fueling ebook, the Fuel Smarter, Run Stronger ebook. You can find details about all of that at the link in the show notes. All right, that's it for today. We will catch you back here next week. Bye for now. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.